And opening this up, doing this and that. Okay, we should be live on Zoom now. So good morning, everybody, and welcome. We're here with Bruce Rawls and Lynn Johnson, and we are reading a book called Absence from Felicity, which is the story of the scribing of A Course in Miracles and the scribe herself, written by Dr. Kenneth Wapnick. And while I get everything set up and going, Bruce, you want to say something? Hello, who you are and what's going on?
Sure, sure. Yeah, you and I Lynn, have been reading course-related stuff for, I think probably better part of a decade now, if we were to tally it up, huh? Um, anyway, give or take a year or three, and we read some of the FAQs from Foundation for A Course in Miracles for a while and talked about those, and then we read Gary Renard's fourth book, and then most recently the Journey Home, which is Ken Wapnick's wonderful expanded commentary on chapter 19 and a whole bunch of other course references. And for the last few months now, and we're making really good progress. We're, let's see, about 30% of the way through, according to your screen, and the thickness of the pages in my book that correlate to that. On the Absence from Felicity, the story of Helen Schuckman and her scribing of A Course in Miracles, also by Ken Wapnick. And probably our favorite course teacher, if we were to pick favorites, although the course would suggest that it would probably be good to pay attention to where we are tempted to make preferences into expectations and setting ourselves up for we-they comparisons and all that kind of stuff. Nothing wrong with having preferences, but when we escalate them to where we make them into disappointments ready to happen, that's probably a good place to look at all that stuff. So anyway, but we're on page 158 in the print version of Helen's biography, Absence from Felicity. And we're about to read letter 5 of her, and chapter 6, Helen's letters to Bill. And we've read the first 4 in the last few weeks. So should I jump in?
Yes, and I'll catch up to you because I'm not exactly sure. I got a bookmarker here,
Okay.
but you start reading and I will find it in the book.
Okay. It's letter 5, and it begins with Ken's commentary, which is the conflict between, quote, heaven and Helen, unquote, continued, as is seen in this next letter, which appears to have been written the following day from the previous letter, letter 4. Presumably, the reference to the, quote, strange things, unquote, that were happening to Helen would seem to refer to the events of the summer of 1965. And so it also lends support to dating these letters in that time period. And here's Helen's letter. Dear Bill, I was very happy last evening for a while and feeling very restful. Things began to go wrong, but slowly. I have not yet recovered. I have had to be very careful today and not do anything until I'm sure it's right. I do feel I should write this now, but what I wrote last night has to be torn up, in brackets. This perhaps explains why the surviving letter, letter 4, is so short. And end of brackets from Ken. Helen resumes, the way it began is all right, but the rest isn't. So I will begin again in the same way. I thought, yes, I do see visions and always have. Briefly, this seemed real. And though I thought it was a trifle dangerous for a second, I came round and thought it's a very happy thing because it's a source of hope. There was a picture of the devil, and I caught sight of it. There's a picture I caught of the devil I caught sight of in a book, and I thought how very unfrightening. What happened next is hard to describe, but it began when I thought it was really quite odd that with all the strange things happening to me, I don't really believe anything is happening. You do, but I don't. That's very peculiar. I bet if I asked people whether they thought it was noteworthy or not, chances are they'd say yes. Not me. Yes, You, yes. Jonathan, yes, though he doesn't know yet what's really happening. Me, no. Yeah. I was struck by the similarity in what I read to you over the phone and what I had said before. And then after a short period of conviction, in parentheses, that word I think should be noted, close parentheses, I thought, no, perhaps I glanced ahead and don't remember. And people get fooled so easily. And then in parentheses, like the miracle at Lourdes, which was part of a previous letter conversation. I thought I was sure, but I wasn't. A rather savage doubting set in, and I suddenly realized I could probably account for a lot of the things that happen in other ways quite within normal chance variation. And how could I ever be so silly as to fall for all this? So that takes us to the top of page 159. Any thoughts or comments or
Well, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, this is so interesting.
Mhm.
That her reflection on her experience, and I have this too. I do the same thing myself, and I bet you probably do too. There
Mhm.
are times when I'll just suddenly be like, you know, this all seems really kind of ridiculous. There's no God in charge of everything and everything running a certain way. There's no pattern to the universe. This is just all, just random happenings. And, here I am trying to make some meaning out of it. And,
Mhm.
I go into a mindset where that is absolutely true.
Mhm. Mhm.
Absolutely true. And I wonder, how could I have been thinking those kind of thoughts?
What was I thinking?
Yeah. And then it just goes away. And then I'm like, well, that's kind of dumb, because I know what's really happening, I think. So, and then I just go back into thinking like I'm thinking right now. But
Right.
it's so easy to just kind of, and also it explains to me how I don't even know how to say it. Normal people who are not in this thinking on this spiritual path, wondering these questions, asking. I mean, there are actually people who do not have an inner dialogue, who are not questioning the purpose of what is, who are just saying this is the way it is, and they got their answer from the church or from the government or something, and they're just happy with that. And you know, it gives me an insight into how people can think that way.
Sure, sure. And of course, we all utilize mechanisms in the world to support our theses, right? And our premises and our assumptions and all of our, things that we want to be true. And of course, one of the biggest things that we want to be true is we want creation to include everything that we made up because of what the course calls the authority problem. We're really proud of what we made up, which is really the whole material universe and everything in it. Space, time, bodies, matter, energy, that whole stuff. Yeah, the whole stuff universe. And um, and yet, the course reminds us that anything that we think that's a separated thought from a split mind, um, we might want to question the validity of that. It doesn't mean we should just cold turkey, just forget everything that we know about the world, but just question our motivation for wanting to be invested identity wise in the world. And I think that's what the course really does systematically. In the first, like those first early workbook lessons, nothing I see means anything, and I've given everything all the meaning that it has for me. It's like those are pretty deeply radical ideas, compared to the normal world seeking, as you just shared. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so weird. Do you think, and that's why, I've been really thinking about it because I'm studying this other book, this new book, um, that's not
Another
course
book?
related. Pardon
Oh
me?
no.
What's that?
Another book? Oh
Another
no.
book, I know. But this one is not a Course in Miracles book, but I believe that it is a channeled work, and it's called The Age of the Heart. And what he's explaining is that um, yeah, until a certain point in time, um, humans were not really ready to activate their experience as the Christ. We were busy learning about the world and studying the dream and getting, caught up in the dream. And there would be some who would come along and say, like in Plato's cave, there's something else, there's something else. But for the most part, humans have just been kind of going along, you know, thinking this is it, this is it. And of course, they have all their myths and their stories. The Bible being a really good example of mythology that has been codified into law.
Mhm.
And so many people are so caught up in it, believing that is, they don't have to question anymore, because here is their answer. There's this guy God, and he does these things, and if you don't do this, then he'll do that, and if you do this, then he'll do this. And it's a whole balance and exchange that uh people can um identify with.
Mhm.
Only a few people will up and question, wait a minute, how does this, or how can this be? But as we've gone along, people have come along, and finally Jesus, back, over 2,000 years ago, came didn't come into the world as some divine being, but just as a man who recognized the Christ in his brothers, saw the sameness in reality of himself and his brothers. And when he was able to do that, he remembered God and
Mhm.
remembered himself, and he remembered the truth about himself. And that, he's the one who, according to our book that we study, and apparently what he says in our book that we study, is that he was the first one uh, who really got that. And that and that doesn't mean that those who came before him didn't get it also, but because it's all one mind, um, it he got it through all of them, through all of us.
Mhm.
Anyway, um, but because his teachings, even though they've been so badly distorted over the years, the basis of his teaching uh, were enough to bring about a decision-making mind, a thinking in the world of what we really are and what could be. And because of all of that going out into the mind, then it became more and more and more, um, exponentially began to grow, and now exponentially growing into what he calls in A Course of Miracles a celestial speed up. That we've hit a point now where we're just going to go, really, really speed up this awakening, and so that's, I guess, kind of what this book that I'm reading, The Age of the Heart, is really talking about, is that it's kind of, I don't claim it to be an add-on to the course, but it kind of is a continuation of, once you've hit this point where you are a teacher of God, and you do have that universal clarity, that you do have that communion with the Holy Spirit on a regular basis, that now what do you do? And, I mean, Jesus is not real big on that in A Course in Miracles. He's not saying, go out and change the world. Uh, he's saying by your very presence, the world has changed. And
Mhm.
I know I'm kind of going on a long rant here, but I think I have a point. So that's what that's the challenge at this point, is that you and I and all of us who are, excuse me, who are teachers of God, our purpose is not to just be, yeah, I'm a teacher of God, I'm going along my way, but really actively working. And I'm not saying going out and becoming an activist. I'm saying actively working in our regular lives at
Mhm.
seeing the Christ in our brothers, and bringing up more of that consciousness in the world.
Mhm.
No, we're not just here doing it because we have a good time doing it. We're here doing it because we've been given a task and we're part of the plan. So, that's kind of what I'm seeing, the movement forward here for us now. If you could say forward when there is no place to go, but maybe upward in a vertical way,
Mhm.
is for us to really uh, own into our position as the bearer of the light and the Christ mind. And I mean, we spend a lot of time talking to each other about how much we agree with everything that we believe, but how much time do we spend not not telling people in the world with our words, but telling people in the world with our being that that the time has come, and you are the Christ. Anyway, enough of that rant. Uh,
I mean that's I think that kind of ties into something that was one of Ken Wapnick's favorite lines, is as far as our ephemeral nature, as bodies, and certainly the personalities that associated with them, since we tend to think of bodies first and minds second, as much as we hate to admit that. The quote that he loved to share from the course was, teach not that I died in vain, but rather that I live, as by demonstrating that I live in you. And that meaning, we have to embody, might even not even know what the right word, but it's one we can relate to. The ideas of the course, by seeing that nothing happened in truth, to destroy the perfect oneness. The separation didn't happen. We don't understand perfect oneness, but we can certainly relate to the sameness and see that, by looking at the humanity, either, in the room that we're in, or down the street, or across the world, or anyone we happen to be thinking of, via just our thoughts, or with the help of our current digital media, or whatever, that then becomes our classroom for forgiving ourselves, and really demonstrating that we can transcend the dream of separation.
Yes, yes. And we have so much opportunity. I mean, talking about the media, my gosh, I mean, you can see it in the news, you can see it on social media, have conversations with people. You're going to hear a lot of fear, a lot of upset, a lot of evidence that the dream is real and the world is a bad place. And it's not up to us to agree and say, yeah, boy, oh boy, oh, I hope this person gets elected or else things are going to go wrong. It's up to us to say that ain't true, it's not happening.
Yep. And just from a statistical point of view, every couple of years we get a few moments to make some marks on a paper, or do the electronic version of that we call voting. But we get to elect 24/7 every second. In fact, every tiny fraction of a second, which thought system we want to identify with and entertain. And that's the real voting power that we have, that is underutilized.
Exactly. Yeah,
or,
yeah,
or shall we say, utilized to our disadvantage, and needlessly so.
exactly. Well, yeah, and excuse me, it's so easy to just go with the flow and buy into to, what we see and hear and agree with the world. I do it myself, and I find myself, rooting for one team over the other, every Sunday or Thursday or Monday when we're watching the hockey or we're watching the football. It's the same thing. It's, one over the other. And, if that's the basis of my thought system on a regular basis, all day, every day, then, I can't just come to the lesson, once a day and say, I choose to see my brother's sinlessness and go on about my day looking at my sinful brothers. It really does have, it is a thing that has to be in every part of our life. I think that's what I see. I do myself a lot, is I compartmentalize, this is my normal life and this is my Course in Miracles life. This is how I deal with uh, whatever. And the key, the consistency of everything. I see everything through the Holy Spirit's eyes. I ask to be shown everything the way the Holy Spirit would want me to see it. That's really the work now.
It
You
really
know,
is. And doing that more and more consistently, all the while being very patient and gentle, and kind to ourselves as we see our resistance come up. Not to indulge in the resistance, but just to say, oh, I must be afraid of the love that's behind that, mostly unconscious desire to compartmentalize what's really all one thing. And which is another way of saying I'd really like to keep the separation going, because I think there's something still to be gained by identifying with a separate self. That this Bruce figure that in my particular case seems to my ego mind have some mileage left in it, and the degree that I think that there's it's still working for me. I just need to be patient when I, in my sane mind, recognize that I'm still trying to beat that dead horse and get it to run around the racetrack. And it's like, no, it's not going to happen. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Yes. That's exactly, and all this from this conversation of Helen saying, I I think I might be fooling myself.
well, yeah. It's I mean that's the wonderfully radical message that the course shares on every page, is really akin to so much of Eastern philosophy, that the world is an illusion, and modern physics, and there's a lot of other non-dual teachings that suggest that our perceptions, even just people who work with optical illusions, and cognitive therapies, sort of thing, just recognize like, well, we see things in such a limited way. As a first approximation, really, we couldn't possibly understand anything, even partially, let alone in its entirety. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Not that we should stop doing the things in the world that make sense from what we think we know, but or believe at least. But it's just to kind of keep on, like you're saying, with increasing the frequency of the amount of time that we spend questioning. Do I really have the whole story? Of course not. No one does. The only awareness that has the whole story is the awareness of wholeness, which fortunately we all have access to, but it's a long process to return from the deep rabbit hole we've seemed to have gone down. And we need to be really, again, gentle and patient with ourselves as we watch the resistance arise, and then catch it more and more quickly each time.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And and doing it without feeling guilty for having fallen off, just recognizing, yeah, that's a thing that happens when the ego is used to being in charge.
Mhm.
And it's all a learning curve, and we're just I think the course is accelerating it tremendously. And if the willingness accelerates it tremendously, so that's how we can get vertical is
Yeah.
but all of our practices are bringing us there. So no need to think that you backed the wrong horse right now. Just just because we're not walking on water or moving mountains, it doesn't mean it just it's there is a we do move through different stages.
Yep.
And that's I think the more of us who have the know that there is a possibility that there is another way. um the more of us that are aware of that, either through direct awareness or through, studying the course or whatever other thing we learn it from, we're helping to accelerate it. So, hence celestial speed up. So, all right. So let's get back to our book here.
Okay, you want to pick up where we left off?
Sure. Um, Okay, so the reader will find in these words the same doubts Helen expressed in her autobiographical account of this time period. And yet, obviously, as will be seen in another part of Helen, as will be seen, another part of Helen did believe, or at the very least, trusted enough in what was happening to allow the experiences to continue. And yeah, and she was having experiences. That is uh, you know, this is something that must have I mean, I know gave her a lot of fear because she was a psychologist and she knew that, normal people didn't hear voices or see visions. Um, so here, I'm gonna let you read on. My son is calling me real quick.
Okay.
So
Okay. So I will pick up where we left off on the top of page 159 in the print version of Abstinence from Felicity, which is where Ken provides a little commentary before Helen resumes reading her letter 5 to Bill. Ken says, the reader will find in these words the same doubts Helen expressed in her autobiographical account of this time period. And yet, obviously, as will be seen, another part of Helen did believe, or at the very least, trusted enough in what was happening to allow the experiences to continue. And then now her account continues here. So I said a prayer in parentheses, like you said, in parentheses, was close print. And it occurred to me that I had better just let things wait. In fact, I thought it might be even be dangerous not to. I tried to write out what I was thinking, but I knew it was wrong. I even think it was evil. And the only thing I think I should write here is a curious misspelling of primeval, which in quotes she has Primaeval, which came out as prime evil. These 2 words in quotes. I didn't sleep very long, even though I was very tired, and I do hope I can take a nap soon because we're going out in the evening. This morning, I promised myself that I would do only what I seemed to feel essential, to be very accurate and keep close to honesty, even in the most unessential details of what I say. I have tried to do this. A lot of horrible things crossed my mind, and most of what I wrote, and in parentheses, and have torn up, close print, was horrible. It was something about distorted miracles. I can forget that now. This morning, I kept saying, sort of without intention, and it's gone now, quote, I am a channel, unquote, which seemed to mean something at the time. But the channel got clogged up, so it doesn't always work except when things get going through the intervening mass. It's not open yet. And then Ken resumes his commentary. This last statement is a reference to the same idea expressed in the vision of the boat sequence, where Helen was not ready yet to use the quote receiving and sending set, unquote. We therefore can see again Helen's honesty in observing both sides of her split mind, the channel as well as the interference. Well, isn't that true for all of us? Our right mind is what channels our inspiration from Holy Spirit, and the ego or wrong mind is what interferes with that. And says, I'm having nothing to do with that because it's not coming from me. Helen's next comments used terminology from her great love, statistics. The meaning, however, is clear even to the layperson as Helen speaks of the importance of her relationship with Bill, in parentheses, a quote, cluster, unquote, close friends, in providing a much needed balance for one another, thereby correcting each other's mistakes of specialness before they continue on their respective paths. And Helen's account continues. Bill, what I think I am safe in writing now is only that I think people get together in little clusters of lights for a time, while that cluster serves best in the syndrome analysis. And then there's a footnote at the bottom of page 160, which we just turned to, which is for 33. It says, study of characteristics or variables that go together. Okay. So it's syndrome analysis. I'm looking for some kind of correlation there. And then she continues, but the nodes, now another footnote, the isolated or outstanding points of the cluster being observed and studied, things that are kind of outside the norm, and their meaning changes as they do. Lots of times the clusters remain together for a long time until the balance is stabilized and all the lights shine equally. Then another cluster becomes better for the members of the original one, and the pattern shifts. I think you and I belong in the same cluster for quite some time. We have a special balance problem at the moment, which not only needs straightening out, but which is very crucial to the next balance problem, which I think we will again need each other for. The weighting system has been poor, and that has obscured the real meaning of the data. We have both done some very odd things in the attempt to correct this, but further adjustments are still necessary. We have already changed some of the names for the dimensions in the factor analysis. And there's the third footnote, number 35, which is, Ken says, is a complicated and sophisticated statistical form of analysis. And we'll leave it at that. And then then Helen resumes. And I think a very important change was the shift we made a while ago in changing the polarity passive-aggressive to passive-creative. That was the beginning of a much better understanding of the dimension, and all the names assigned to clusters are arbitrary, based only on what you think the factors in them mean. Sounds like a lot of their psychological research and the statistics that they were applying to it, just commenting on what we just read here. But I think what's interesting is, Helen is not only applying it to the case studies that they run across in their work with psychoanalysis and work at the Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in the psychology department, but they are applying it to themselves. And so that's that introspective perspective is always helpful, isn't it? And crucial in the course's perspective as well.
Helen has such an analytical mind.
Yeah.
And this letter is, pretty amazing in just the whole content of it, being so aware of, the factors that were playing into what was happening to her, and the thoughts that were coming into her mind and everything. I mean, just being able to trying to analyze them to a place where she could maybe control in her mind what was going on, rather than just being kind of, at the mercy of the voice or the vision or whatever. She's just trying to correlate things to see what could be the purpose of all of this.
Yeah. And of course, everything is correlated with everything else in truth, but that's only because we've gone to such great lengths to separate everything else from that seem, even our vocabulary, we have words like else or other that really don't apply. And once we get past the dualistic dream to pure non-duality, right?
Yeah, and the way you put that is so beautiful. It is really just the acknowledgments of and measurement of differences. And that once we get over the acknowledgement and analysis of differences and see that there are none, which is what happens when all these statistics start going, pretty soon they just overlap and overlap and overlap until there's is one the graph of us is a solid
Yeah, yeah.
a solid circle.
A
There's nothing outside.
Venn diagram with
Yeah,
one set that includes everyone.
exactly. Exactly. And
Or an
so
infinite circle, like it talks about in the Forgotten Song section in chapter 21.
yeah, so interesting. And I love it. I love um Helen's analytical mind.
You want to pick up where we left off?
Sure. Yeah, I think something must be bothering my son, but he usually calls when he's upset or angry, but he didn't sound upset or angry, so he probably maybe just wanted to chat. But we will talk later.
Okay.
Okay, so Ken continues. Um, this discussion anticipates the explanation Jesus provides early in the course's dictation of the differences between Helen's and Bill's egos. Here, Helen's explanation to Bill contrasts her ego's misuse of her very strong will, and in parens, as in the evil priestess of her visions, in parens, with Bill's more consistent focus, which, however, had been severely weakened. This explanation continues now, utilizing the terms creative, which is substituted for aggressive, and receptive, which is substituted for passive. I love that. Creative and aggressive and receptive is passive. Okay. So Helen continues. I think we need each other badly now to restore the balance on this dimension. I have misused the creative extreme, and you have misused the receptive one. We have neither of us neutralized these urges well, and so we do not understand that no position on the continuum is dangerous in itself. Wow. We have also lost the realization that the real control lies in a sense of proportion because we are too out of balance to see it. This is just amazing. It is it's like she knew all these things, and wow, it's it but I don't even know. Okay, as she continues, it is curious that much against what either of us would probably have predicted some years back, we have each done much to encourage and help the other in the direction we would hardly have anticipated. At least we would have anticipated it if we had been really honest at that time, which we weren't. I'm trying very hard to bring you toward dominance, of which you are very much afraid. The reason for your fear is that you have defined for yourself that you have defined the extremes inaccurately and are therefore confused as to where hostility lies. It doesn't lie anywhere along the continuum. Your notion of receptivity has been equated with thievery, and your private definition of creativity is murder. Wow. While you believe that you cannot either receive or create, even though you are really capable of either. Wow, this is just so deep.
It sounds like that line you just read sounds like it comes straight out of the course.
Yeah, it really does. And just I mean, I see this, how you can think that uh that that being receptive is taking something that doesn't belong to you, and that being creative is forcing something uh that may not be accepted,
Yeah. Yeah.
received.
Exactly. The other thing I was thinking of is, the laws of chaos. You have what you've taken. So the word thievery kind of comes into play. It's like, well, if we think that we've taken from someone else or from our creator, as in thievery, then the obvious guilt connection would apply. And yet if we all have and are everything, if being and having are the same in truth, then it's only a misunderstanding that could give rise to the idea that thievery is possible, that something could be taken from something else, and that some part could be removed and benefit one to the detriment of another. And that's the whole premise of the belief in separation. And And so because we feel horrible about that, mostly unconsciously, we've projected it out onto the world that then becomes the scapegoat territory, which we draw from to find the current victim of our wrath and grievances. And then it's like, okay, now where am I going to fix that? Well, yeah, I have to go outside that thought system. I have to question the very premise of lack that is the premise of duality in order to transcend that. And that's the only place where forgiveness is going to work is recognizing that um, the thievery or the attack or the grievance or whatever category you want to put that discomfort into has never really happened in truth.
Yeah. And just the idea that, you think that you're not worthy of love.
Mm-hmm.
And we believe that, we don't understand or have the experience of the love of God within us. So we think that God is distant, and that in order for us to experience his love, we have to do something or be something that we think we're not. We think we don't deserve it. So we think that any love that's given to us is undeserved,
Yeah.
and that we are thieves, um
And murderers too. I reread
and
that.
murderers too. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, what's not love is murder. What's not love is thievery. And that's really, and I think we can really notice that, since thievery might be a little less egregious in some cases. Um, Certainly in the eyes of the world, we can justify that probably in some cases more than others. But still it assumes a premise that the course doesn't ever address or acknowledge. Well, it addresses it in the sense that it tells us that it's ridiculous and therefore forgivable. But we need to acknowledge the premise and be willing to consider the premise that nothing happened, and then the need for robbing Peter to pay Paul, or killing Peter to
Yeah.
benefit.
Killing Abel to get God's love.
Yeah, exactly. None of those things make any sense, and therefore just become part of an insane world that then is forgivable from the perspective that sees it all as made up and therefore questionable and forgivable.
Yeah. But it depends on who we think God is, and what
Right.
we think God's intentions are for us, and
Exactly.
who we think we are,
Yeah.
and what we think we deserve, or what we think God should be doing for us or to us.
Yep.
So, it is, all the same thing. You got to forgive God. That's, he says that you got to forgive me. And why? Because we believe that he is this withholder of love, and that he's the one who's not giving us what we need when we think that we're in lack. We don't blame. I mean, we do blame our brothers, and we do blame ourselves, but mainly we're blaming God. Like, what the heck is wrong with you, and why don't you take better care of your child if you love me so much? Obviously you don't love me.
We keep
And
dragging God into our dualistic dream and wonder why he doesn't tend to our every whim and wish, right?
yeah, no, we try to bargain with him, we beg him, we offer him, things, we yell at him, we get a well, we do everything, and he's just sitting there laughing like, I have already given you everything. It is that prodigal son thing.
Yeah.
That son, he thought, man, my dad is going to be so mad. He's not going to love me anymore. He's going to want to throw me in the, go, sleep with the pigs. But I would rather be home sleeping with the pigs than out here in this world by myself. And when he gets home, what's his dad say? Yeah, here, welcome home, here, brother, you've been here the whole time. You've got everything. You know, what do you think I did? I didn't do anything. I'm just here being your dad and loving you. You're the ones that came up with these stories.
Mhm, mhm.
Anyway.
Did,
um,
Should I pick up where we left off?
Yeah, let's see. Did we
Okay.
finish
I
the
think we almost finished that paragraph. Let me just finish back up a couple sentences.
okay.
Your notion of receptivity has been equated with thievery, and your private definition of creativity is murder. While you believe that, you cannot either receive or create, even though you are really capable of either. But don't make any step yet. You're still too bound by your own definitions. And then Ken comments, a substantial portion of the early dictation of the course was devoted to Jesus helping Bill with this very problem of confusing receptivity with thievery and creativity with murder, as the problem manifested itself regarding a class he was to teach at Columbia University. As will be discussed below, Bill's fear of public speaking and professing, Jesus's pun on Bill's being a professor, a thought system stemmed from his former misuse of the power of his mind. Thus, he equated creativity, parentheses, or teaching, with murder. On the other hand, not sharing the love and truth that was contained in his mind produced guilt over selfish hoarding, i.e., having stolen this truth, keeping it for himself. All of this is a direct foreshadowing of the course's later teachings on special relationships, which reenact the original separation belief that we misused our minds to murder God and steal his power. These self-definitions of murderer and thief replace God's definition that we are and will always will be his innocent and loving child. Wow. Ken is once again tells it like it is. Helen then shifts to herself and to her self-accusations of pushing others away so as to not receive love from them or to keep their love away by manipulating them, quote, using the hooks, unquote, into becoming her slave. And then Helen shares, I come into this with an opposite kind of distortion. I have been very much afraid of receptivity and won't even listen to God with an open mind. Nobody can get very near me because he might be giving me something. And since I don't want it very much, I might be tempted to take it and burn it up. My notion of receptivity is death. And so I have closed the channels. Creativity, on the other hand, is more associated in my distortions with power and especially with a kind of spell binding, which is particularly vicious. I do not associate it as much with murder, in parentheses, I think that is more your error, close parentheses, as with enslaving people. I use magic to spin hooks and fishing sinkers, and poor fish get caught on the spikes. I don't really mean magic so much as wits. I am in a particular dilemma, which is somewhat the opposite of yours, because I think that my choice is between death, in parentheses, and it's a violent death too, close parentheses, and using the books. You cannot move because you think you must either steal or murder. We are both wrong. So interesting commentary from Helen there. So obviously, I think she's getting the idea that, that anything given to the ego, whether it's giving or receiving, from the ego perspective is some kind of murder or thievery, because what's not love is murder or thievery in this case. He's getting that additional alleged crime that we think we're all committing as egos. Right?
Yeah, wow. Yeah, again, this is really fascinating that she's, got a really, she has a clear picture of herself in her own mind of, what she's doing and why she's doing it and how, and also, an idea of what Bill is doing. And, both of them are, these are all directly related to concepts in the Course of Miracles. It's like this was in Helen's mind a long time before she ever started, actually receiving or scribing the words. But it's a really good picture of how we think about ourselves and how we think about our brothers and what we think we're doing here in this world.
Yeah.
I use magic to spin hooks and fishing sinkers, and poor fish get caught on the spikes. She's talking about, how she uses her mind to manipulate.
Right. As we
and
all do.
as we all do. Yeah.
Run ego mode. Do you
Yeah,
want to finish the last page? I think there's just a little over a page left in this particular
sure.
letter.
I'll do that. I also wanted to also though mention that uh now it flew through my mind. It'll come back, I'm sure.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll finish. I'll read the last few paragraphs. Um, okay, Ken says, again, a student of A Course in Miracles will recognize here in Helen's words, yes, okay, duh, why did I just say what I just said? Uh, precursors of later discussions on special relationships
This
in
mine's
these
joined, right?
yeah, really, is in these insane and vicious defenses against truth. And the choice is always made between our own death or preserving our seeming life through baiting others, thereby symbolically killing them. The body is the means for accomplishing the ego's goal. And of this, the Course would later say, this is from text chapter 24, section 7. What would you save it, quote, in brackets, the body, for? For in that choice lie both its health and harm. Save it for show as bait to catch another fish, to house your specialness in better style, or weave a frame of loveliness around your hate, and you condemn it to decay and death. Is that it?
So there's the fishing metaphor,
Yeah.
which I didn't even recall until you brought it up.
No, I was thinking about that myself. Where is this fishing thing? And of course, and then what I had been thinking before was that was she saying that Bill was feeling because he was hearing a truth, knowing a truth of what was really happening, and yet he was still going out and lecturing and teaching what the books were saying. Is that what she was saying he was feeling conflicted about?
I rather than guess about that, I would just say what the little that I would probably, venture to generalize would be actually sort of along sort of archetypal gender roles to a certain extent. And that is Bill's guilt would be along the lines of sending or transmitting the truth, and Helen's about receiving the truth, if you will. If that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. I'll continue reading. Helen then compares sounding like the voice of Jesus. Sorry. Helen then continues, sounding like the voice of Jesus, imparting the same tone of gentle wisdom that is so characteristic of A Course in Miracles, and yet which once again predates the Course's scribing. We thus can see further evidence of the wisdom that was present in Helen, despite her successful attempts to conceal it. Specifically here, she addresses the need for her and Bill to change their self-concepts and the important role their having joined together in our recent alliance plays in the redefinition. And here now Helen continues. In our recent alliance, you have done much to change your definitions, but you can't appreciate the magnitude of the shift because your definitions, though now open-ended, are still not right. I can't move too much yet because I'm still afraid to open the channel and redefine both extremes. Bill, this dimension has to be straightened out. The lights in the cluster are all off balance. Very interesting. And then Ken says, after some material, which I have not included here, the letter continues. So there's stuff he didn't put in here. And this is in parens, and it has a footnote. So I'll read the whole paragraph that's in the parens, and then you can read us the footnote.
Okay.
I remembered my brother threw me into the water. It was a very deep because I think it was a lake, and he was rowing. He said it was to teach me to swim. You know, Bill, it's curious about this life and defenses. Freud was right about them, except that when you find traumas to yourself, they are defenses too. It is not what other people did to you that account for things. If that's what you look for, you can analyze forever and nothing much will happen. even though it's probably true. And then if you decide to hate your brother because he threw you into the water, you miss the point twice. And I'll let you read them.
Yeah. Right. Well, they're all traumas to ourselves, right? Anything that seems to happen at the hands of another, as the course points out, and I think it's one of the supplements, psychotherapy pamphlet, I think. It's like, special agents seem to be ministering unto him, that they merely give form to his own desire, something like that. I could look it up, but that, everything that seems to happen to us, we've asked for on some level, mostly unconscious. We ask for the thought system, and then the form is sort of irrelevant from the course's perspective. The content is always, I feel sinful. I feel, I think I've sinned, so I'm separated, aka separated. Therefore, I feel guilty, and now I'm afraid of what the payback's going to be from shattering perfect oneness in my mind only.
Yes, yeah. I think I must have decided wrongly because I'm not at peace.
Yep. Should I finish the last paragraph?
Sure.
Sure.
Oh, can you read the footnote on number
Okay,
7?
yeah, sure, you bet. Footnote number
Then you
36
can finish.
is the first miss is hating someone else. The second is blaming that hatred on what was seemingly done to you. Well, there's the 2 steps of forgiveness right there. Blaming someone else. Lesson number 5. I'm never upset for the reason I think. Lesson 34. I could see peace instead of this. This being, I've now moved the guilt back into my own mind, withdrawn it from the world and from other people. But now what do I do with that guilt? And I need Holy Spirit's help to do both of those steps, to go dismantle and dissolve and disintegrate the sin, guilt, fear thought system externally, and then also internally, in those 2 steps in the outer and inner shields of oblivion.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So
Yeah.
go ahead and finish the last paragraph there, and we'll
Okay.
be
Ready for 6 next week. Yeah. Helen's wise comments here are familiar in form and content to the earlier ones, expressing the recognition that we are upset not because of what others have done to us in the past, but because we chose in the present to be upset. It's not what other people did to you that accounts for things. It's that what you look for, you can analyze forever. In part 3, I return to this theme of Helen's wisdom by citing 3 examples from her pre-course life that illustrate her intuitive understanding of how the external has no effect on her state of mind. Clearly, such insights represent the total opposite of Helen's ego thought system that blamed everyone and everything else for her own misery and unhappiness. These letters emphasize, again, Helen's incisive awareness of her split mind. And wow, isn't that true of all of us? It seems like every week you and I get together and read this wonderful biography and realize more and more, it's like, he's talking about all of us, which is good news, because if we can look at our ego's craziness more and more consistently, like we were talking about at the beginning of the hour, we're on our way, and then that's all we really need to do, isn't it?
that is really all that we really need to do. And I just wanted to note that Glorian mentioned in the chat when she was talking about the trauma, it says the trauma justifies the defense. And that's, we think, I've been attacked. So I'm perfectly legit in attacking back.
Mm-hmm.
It's, the Son of God needs no defense. So, all right. Well, thank you, Bruce, so much.
Thank you, Lynn, as always. Have a great week, and love to all.
All right. And we will see you next Saturday.
Look forward to it. Thanks. Bye for now.
Bye for now. What am I doing? Trying to, no. I don't know why this thing won't just do what I'm telling it to do. All right, cancel. I'm just trying to turn off the live stream.